Hello, guys. Welcome back to Christianity Reloaded. Today we're talking about God. The supreme being. And I want to say that any God that wants you to know Him through just a book, that's book only, is not a true God. Is a weak God. If any God is presenting you a book and said, "You only know me by this book," that God, you shouldn't worship that God. It doesn't deserve your worship. You know what I mean? There should be more, something else more than just giving somebody a book and say, "Oh, look, I'm God. You find me in this book." Any God that does this is a false God. Any person that's coming to you and say, "Oh, read this book," and you just find God there. This is what God is. That person is trying to brainwash you. You know what I mean? God shouldn't depend, tell human beings to just depend on a book. He should do more than that. God should do some miracles. You have to at some point, you know, prove to people that you're God. And I'm not saying like just somebody say in a book that, "Oh, I have a encounter with God." People that is following you or in your religion should be able, individuals, be able to say, "Look, there's a miracle that I have encountered." You can't just send a book and just be like distance God. There's no reason to worship God like that. The God should be able to demonstrate to people, to human being, like that He is God. Like what we have in the Old Testament. You know what I mean? Like the Moses, Abraham. They don't just receive a book or somebody present a book to them and say, "Oh, God encountered them." They encountered God. And God proved that He is God. It's easy for somebody to just start saying something about, claiming that God is saying something. Like we see, this cult and false religion we have in the world that just want you to take their book. That this book is from somewhere. You know, you can just say that God give you a book. It have to be something more than that. There should be something to prove that this God is living. He's not a dead God. So somebody might, some dead God, in small g might, tell you something, like, "Oh, this is," but it's dead. It's not living. Living God should not present a book to you. He should present more than a book to you to prove Himself. I'm not saying like, somebody might not have a holy book like the Bible. Bible is a holy book. You find, God talked about in the Bible. But the Christian church doesn't depend only on the Bible. People have encountered with God, in various time and places. It's not just because we find it in the Bible. It's just because people experience God as well. You know what I mean? They experience miracles. That's how it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be like the Muslims will present you with a book and say, "Oh, this is how the book, this is the word of God or the word of Allah." And when you press them further, they don't even, when they're talking about their Quran, for instance, they don't even, the same thing with Mormon as well. They don't even talk about how there is any divine connection to it. The first thing they're gonna tell you is memory. People memorize this book. Like, it depends on people, human effort. God is now depending on memory of human beings to keep it. Oh, it's memorized. They didn't even tell you, these people that memorizing it, they don't have any divine help. No, they don't put it there. You can't see a Muslim talking about that one. And the way you ask them, who wrote the Quran? They will just tell you it's a recitation and somebody write it. They don't even know who wrote it, and they don't even tell you whether the person writing it have any divine authority to do that, or even have any have like this is his or her responsibility to write it, because and they're gonna resort to, oh, the prophet said that it's not the prophet saying, it's not even that the Allah is telling them to write it down. You know what I mean? They will not tell you that it's the prophet. They're not which is not the word of God. The word of Allah is not the word of prophet is telling them to write it down. You know what I mean? This is so funny. Not funny, but it's serious. You know what I mean? Because people just follow something like once it's religion, people follow it spiritually. That's why sometimes you look at other people following false religion, you don't blame them much, because that's what they brainwash them on. Peace.